Taking the Myth, your skeptical discussion show. I'm Stephen Knight, and joining me to work through the big topics is Iram Ramzan. Hello.
Hello.
How goes it? Happy Easter.
And happy Easter to you. Well, is it happy because it's Good Friday, so we should be sad because Jesus died?
It's okay Friday. It's like it's okay average Friday.
It's not bad Friday.
It's not bad Friday. Could be worse Friday. Yeah. He is risen. He is risen.
If he died for our sins, does that mean we get to sin as much as we like?
He died for nothing unless we sin as much as we like.
Yeah. He took one for the team.
He did. Thanks, J-Man. So,
I hope there are no Christian fundamentalists waiting outside my house right now.
Pitchforks at the ready.
Yeah, should be okay, though.
How did we end up with chocolate eggs, though? That's always perplexed me. I mean, I tried to look out for, I don't know if you've seen it in the shops, the Real Easter Egg it's called. It's like some Christian evangelical group produce it. And I try and buy one every year because it comes with a little booklet and a sticker set. And the booklet tells you the story of Easter. And I love the way they try and make sense of, rabbits and chocolate eggs. And one of the excuses they gave for the chocolate egg was the fact that the rock covering Jesus' tomb was egg-shaped.
Right.
Points for creativity, though.
I've never heard of these eggs, but, I mean, I'm not complaining. I like chocolate, so any excuse to eat it is great with me.
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, even if it is Christian propaganda, it is chocolate, so obviously it's going to sell. Sedar's on Patreon.
Yes.
You are launched. How's that going?
Well, I only launched it last night and got a handful of patrons.
So you can retire now, basically.
I can move all my accounts to an offshore island somewhere, join Richard Branson or
Jimmy
something.
Carr.
Yeah. Just take it easy. Just eat Easter eggs for a living and rant about religious extremists.
Well, I think Patreon's a great thing, really, in terms of support, because people, I mean, it's voluntary for a start. If people like what you do, they can send you a few bucks. If they don't have to. And it's a good way of supporting content, really. And you're not beholden to any sort of advertising constraints. You don't have to pander to a specific audience. It's just you write what you want. If people like it, they support it. If they don't have to. So what's the link for your Patreon page now?
It's patreon.com/Sedar.
Whoa, slash. Oh, okay, sorry.
SEDAA. So no pressure to pledge, but if you don't, you're racist.
Yes.
Just throwing that out there. If you don't pledge, then you're a regressive left or alt-right. I've not decided which is worse. So you're racist either way.
You're a wrong-un. You're a wrong-un.
You're a wrong-un. But it's completely voluntary and there's no pressure.
Okay. All right. Well, I was thinking, when was the last time we recorded? It was March, wasn't it? But
it was just after the
Westminster attacks.
Really, really atrocious Westminster attack.
So
it's been just under a month.
Right, and I was just trying to think in my mind, how many attacks have we seen since then? I suppose the big one to mention is Stockholm. That's Sweden, and that's obviously closest to home to us. It's in Europe before we obviously trigger Article 50, up anchor and float off into the Pacific, as some people are seeming to think it means. Now, this was another vehicle attack, and I think a while back we spoke about how that was an instruction from various religious organisations a while back. And there's a writer, a tweeter, somebody I follow on Twitter. I'm always impressed with his writing. He's called Damo. I think he's at Concrete Milk. He's got his own. Oh
yes, Concrete Milk. Yeah.
Yeah, he's always very clear, lucid in his writing, and our interests kind of overlap. Sometimes when I think about writing something, I've noticed he's already done it, and it's pitch perfect. I couldn't have done a better job. He's wrote a little something after the Westminster attacks. It's called Westminster and the Islamic Connection, and he basically outlines what we alluded to in previous podcasts, where these injunctions for vehicle attacks come from. So I thought I'd just clear some of this up. Apparently, in 2010, the Al-Qaeda's online magazine called Inspire. I don't know, are you a subscriber, Iram?
No comment.
I'm a little bit worried because I like to read these things, especially Dabiq, because it's the English language propaganda piece, and this is for the Islamic State. But I'm just wondering about whether or not I'm getting flagged, because I spend an awful lot of time Googling various Islamic extremist organisations and downloading their propaganda. We're not going
to hear about a lone wolf called Stephen Knight in the news anytime soon, are we? Because I'm just putting it out there. I don't know.
I think if I sign up for Arabic classes, that'll be it then. The SWAT team will be kicking down the door.
If you go to teach English abroad, then it's definitely you.
Yeah, as soon as I start going to that wedding in Pakistan, I think that's when they might swoop. Okay, so yeah, the magazine Inspire, Al-Qaeda's official propaganda piece, instructed people to attack, I quote, the enemies of Allah by ploughing vehicles into pedestrians in crowded locations. That they actually advise that the narrower the spots, the better, because it gives less chance of people to run away.
So that's really considerate of them,
isn't it? Yeah. So I mean, talking about the Stockholm attack, I mean, I think it was 5 dead, possibly 4. I've not popped my head in on that since, and I'm amazed. I mean, obviously it's tragic, and 4 people is 4 too many, but I'm amazed there were not more deaths after that. I don't know if you naively think if there's a truck bearing down on you in a crowded area, you might be one of the lucky ones to be able to get the hell out of the way before it happens. You think, if you're fairly young and able-bodied, you might just have a little spring in your step to avoid that. And that's nonsense. I don't know if you saw the CCTV footage from inside a shop of people fleeing and the truck going past at 70 miles per hour or something like that, and there's just no getting out of the way of something like that. I think if you're in the way of that, it's game over, basically.
I think we should be. I think we should be glad there weren't more deaths and injuries. I think with that, it's just a case of sheer luck, really, isn't it?
Absolutely.
Because when someone's trying to plough a truck into somebody, they're not going to care that much who it goes into, just as long as they take as many people with them as possible.
So, also in 2014, this is from Damo's blog, Islamic State spokesperson Abu Mohammed al-Adnani issued the following statement directed at enthusiastic ISIS supporters without the means for acquiring explosives and firearms, because that's the thing, isn't it? These kind of things tend to flag up if you're stockpiling peroxide or fertilizer, or if you're trying to acquire weapons, that gets you noticed. So the idea is these attacks, these quick and easy attacks, get access to a vehicle, a knife or whatever. So they said, if you are not able to find an IED, so that's an improvised explosive device, or a bullet, then single out the disbeliever and slaughter him with a knife or run him over with your car. So this isn't the first Islamic attack by means of vehicle. It won't be the last. I hope it is, but it just won't. So there's a clear, direct causal link here between the instructions of various Islamist groups and these actions. I believe the actual suspect they have in custody for this was bragging about it on the messaging device WhatsApp not long after it. Did you hear this?
Yes. Yeah. People's stupidity really astounds me sometimes. It's bad enough that you've done something like that, but then they go on WhatsApp or Facebook and then incriminate themselves as well. Whether they do it deliberately or not, I'm not sure, but yeah, it just seems easier to catch them now, isn't it? And also, it just goes to show you, doesn't matter whether you're rich or poor, you can all become terrorists. See, that's the beauty of ISIS. It doesn't discriminate. As long as you want to kill as many people, you don't have to have as many books as some other person. You can just sign up, just pick up any tool, get into a truck and just kill as many people as you like. You don't need no does to start killing. Very, very, very considerate group as well. They accept anyone except non-believers, of course.
Well, I think I'm just going to
don't want them.
I think I'm just going to cut that little advertisement for the Islamic State out of context and just put it up front of the show of you just saying, join ISIS. Yeah, it's very equal opportunity, isn't it? It is very equal opportunity. So I don't know what else there is really to say about the Stockholm attack. It seems like business as usual. It's the new normal, as they say in Europe now, these attacks. I believe that Sweden have been now making some anti-immigration sounds, some mass immigration, should I say, in terms of they're going to change the way they operate in terms of immigration. I don't know if that's going to happen. I don't know what the plans are on that. I'm going to have to look into it deeper. But do you think anything's been learned?
This is a country that was accepting a lot of, immigrants and refugees in particular. So,
but
if anything,
what about their horrific meddling in the Middle East and the numerous wars and their terrible foreign policy decisions?
Yeah, I mean, why hasn't anybody mentioned that? Could it be because they haven't really done anything? When was the last time Sweden bombed something?
The last time they bombed was at the Eurovision Song Contest. Thank you very much. Here all day.
I'm sorry, but it just goes to show you, like, we have people denying it so many times, but you cannot deny that ideology plays a part in this. I mean, come on, Sweden is one of the most liberal countries that is out there. You know, they were accepting refugees, and still someone decides to go and start killing indiscriminately. So I don't know what it's going to take for some of the people in denial out there to finally wake up and realize it's not a foreign policy. You know, it's not bombing Middle Eastern countries. It is ideology, first and foremost.
I don't know if you followed the carnage on Twitter as it was unfolding. I think Twitter's usually the place that you can... I mean, it gets the news before the news gets it now. I imagine a lot of journalists spend their time trawling through Twitter, getting information, and the photos came in pretty quick after the attacks, Stockholm, and obviously they're quite disturbing and violent and bloody. And something stood out a little bit as well was the fact that a dog had been killed in this attack as well. I don't know if you saw this.
Yeah, you blogged about it, right?
I did, yeah. I mean, not that I don't care about the human victims. I think, you know, every time something like this happens, we talk about the human cost. But it was just strange to see. I mean, it stood out for its peculiarity. You don't really think that in these explosions and things that happen, you know, domestic pets end up on the end of it. And what was quite touching as well was that a few people in Sweden had gone to the site of this attack and left a little tribute to this dog. They'd put down a few biscuits, a little candle, and put the collar of a dog that they'd originally owned that had passed away, just as a way of honouring this dog called Iggy, which was actually a rescue dog from Dublin, I believe, and, you know, transported to Sweden to some new owners. And then this kind of snowballed, and this tribute got bigger and bigger, and lots of people were turning up with flowers and leaving notes and things like that. And I just thought it was quite nice to see, in a way, specifically because dogs are generally considered haram in Islamic culture. I don't know, many dogs in your childhood growing up?
I remember when I went to Pakistan when I was about 4 or 5, and I think we had a guard dog in the family house. I do remember a dog. I think it was either in my grandparents' house or the neighbour's house. And it was treated all right. A few of my uncles have had dogs as well, but they're not kept as pets. They're just mostly guard dogs, really. So they weren't allowed in the house to, you know, eat or be petted by the rest. I mean, they weren't treated badly, but they weren't treated as, loving pets or anything. But I do have a few Muslim friends, and they're all women as well, who just don't go anywhere near dogs, and they're scared of them, and they don't want to touch them or guide it. Seriously, they will cross the road to avoid the dog. It's absolutely ridiculous.
I've had it before where, I had Muslim friends in school, and when we've always had a dog in the family, not anymore, but when they'd come round to my house, they'd turn a shade of white at the sight of a dog. And it's one of them stereotypes that we'd always hear, like South Asian people are scared of dogs, Muslims are scared of dogs, things like that. And I never really paid much attention to it in terms of its truth, but I suppose there is a little kernel of truth to it in the sense that it's a cultural attitude towards the animal, and if you're not familiar with them, I mean, to be fair, it probably serves you well. You're probably wise to be a little bit cautious.
Probably white.
Probably white.
Was that a Freudian slip?
Freudian slip.
You deserve it because you're white.
You deserve it. Yeah, but you probably wise to be cautious of unknown dogs anyway. But yeah, it's just an interesting little thing that I've noticed. I've had it. I've had it when takeaway men have come to my door to deliver things, and the cats ran out and they thought it was a dog and nearly dived in the hedge. So,
well, you say it's cultural, but actually there is a religious reason for it.
Yes.
You might be aware of it, but for some of our listeners out there, there's a saying in Islam that if you keep a dog in the house, and the angels of mercy don't visit that house. And I think also if you have pictures or photographs in your house, the angels don't visit. So yeah, don't keep dogs if you want the angels to visit, and if you carry on keeping dogs, then no blessings for you, basically. That's why people are wary of dogs, or even scared of them, because we've just grown up with that attitude that they're dirty and they're disgusting, and the fact that you're not supposed to keep them Islamically, and if you do keep them, then they shouldn't be in the house. They should be guard dogs. So they should be guarding, say, livestock or the house. They're not there to be kept as pets.
Thanks, Hadith.
No problemo.
So, I believe you wanted to talk a little bit about Mashal Khan, which is another story that's broke over the last couple of days, which is another atrocious indicator of the problems with blasphemy laws, perceived blasphemy, or just simple allegations of blasphemy in Pakistan. Maybe you could tell us what that's all about.
Yeah, well, I think it was yesterday that, and this was Thursday, the news came out that a student in Pakistan, Mashal Khan, he was lynched to death by a mob simply for posting something that was perceived to be blasphemous. I'm not sure what the exact content of the post was, but this is a young man who described himself as the humanist on Facebook, and he was a proud Muslim as well. There's nothing about his post that would suggest he was atheist or anything. Not that that is a problem in my opinion, but this is Pakistan we're talking about. So he posted some things that were considered to be blasphemous or offensive, and a big mob just gathered around him and started attacking him, and unfortunately he died. And I made the big mistake of clicking on a link to the video. Why? I mean, I don't know why anyone would even post such a video. It was on a news article. I think it was pathos.com, and he said, "Oh, this is the link to the video." Obviously, they didn't include the link within that article. It was a separate link. But then I just think, well, why on earth would you want to even watch that? And I clicked on it by mistake, and it was absolutely horrific. It was just disgusting to watch. I only managed about 3 seconds before I got rid of it, because I don't know, I was shaking afterwards. After I watched that very short clip. I just can't imagine how anyone could do that to another living being, human or animal. It's sick.
Well, it's absolutely brutal by all accounts, but it was that brutal that there was many conflicting reports to just how he died, because he was attacked in so many different ways. I mean, a senior police officer quoted in the AFP news agencies called Nayaz Saeed. He said he was badly tortured after being shot at close range. He was beaten with sticks, bricks and hands. Also, some reports say he was shot, while others say he was beaten to death with planks. They don't actually know, because he came under so many different forms of attack. And this was just because he was alleged to have put something out there that was considered blasphemous.
Yeah, in Pakistan, it doesn't even matter whether it is actually blasphemous or not. You only have to make that allegation, and that's it. That is it. You're basically on death row then. Doesn't matter whether you've done something wrong or not. Once it's out there that you've done something that is considered blasphemous, you will be sought, and people will find you, and you'll either be arrested, or worse, you'll just be lynched and murdered. This is a country that has a long history of people getting into trouble for posting or doing something that is considered blasphemous. There are people in prison, languishing in jails because they've done something that was considered blasphemous, or they were lynched by a mob before it even got to court. I think the number of actual deaths is not that high, but that's not the point, really. It's the fact that there's this mentality out there. And there were a few protests outside the press clubs in the cities of Lahore and Karachi in Pakistan, where people were saying expressing solidarity with Mashal and saying that his killers need to be brought to justice. But if you look at the pictures, there's a fair amount of people there, but nowhere near as many people that came out to support the murderer Mumtaz Qadri. And for some of our listeners might be familiar with this individual, but if you don't know, he murdered the governor of the Punjab several years ago because he wanted to reform the country's blasphemy laws. Nothing had even been done. He just said this, and this man who was his bodyguard killed him. And he's been glorified and hailed as a martyr, and people commemorate him and celebrate him. There were hundreds of thousands of people out on the streets when he was hanged. So hundreds of thousands of people will come out in support for a murderer. But somebody who's a humanist, secularist, someone who believes in human rights is lynched to death, and you probably only get a few dozen people coming out to show support. That just tells you all you need to know about that country, and it seems to be getting worse. It does not seem to be getting any better. It's just getting worse, because this is a country where you have poor law enforcement, you have taboos around so-called blasphemy, and you have a culture where you're encouraged to seek revenge on someone who seemed to have done something wrong or wronged you in any way. And then when you've got something like Facebook where you can post this and the ability to reach out to a mass audience, they're all ingredients for trouble. And I don't see it getting any better, unfortunately.
That's the problem, and that's one of the main concerns I have, because anyone, like, if you have unpopular views in the UK, people call you a dick, and the law generally supports you. If you have unpopular views in Pakistan, progressive views, you're fair game for murder, and the police rarely do anything about it. How can you change? How can you reform a society, a country like that, when any of the people speaking up are fair game for physical attack or murder? It just seems like a hopeless situation.
Yeah, and I've been contacting all my friends in Pakistan, and some of the people who I know are journalists or writers there, who are secular writers and have progressive views, and I've told them, look, please be careful, because now anyone's fair game. And even they've said to me as well, it's never been this bad. It's never been that bad, because some of them, I read some of their articles and I think, how do you get away with writing something like that in Pakistan? And they said, well, it's not too bad as long as you don't do X, Y, and Z. But even they are scared, and these are people who have sort of never crossed a certain line. But even they are scared now, and I think it's easy for us to say, oh, people should carry on speaking out, blah, blah, blah. But that doesn't really work, because you speak out, that's it. You're instantly silenced by a gunshot or any other weapon that somebody can pick up, and no one, even if they sympathize with the victim, they don't want to speak out because they think, well, I don't want to be next. I don't want to be targeted. It's better to keep my head down and stay away from all this. And unfortunately, it seems like these crazy people are in the majority, or if they're not in the majority, they're certainly more vocal about it. Well, I wanted to very briefly mention the case of Dina Ali. I don't know if you've heard about this, but it's been all over social media, and it's been picked up by a few websites now. She's a Saudi woman who apparently fled the country to seek asylum in Australia, and then she claims she was detained en route in the Philippines until her father and uncles could come and collect her and then take her back. So, she's a 24-year-old woman. She's not some teenager who's run away from home. This is a grown woman. But obviously under Saudi Arabia, women aren't considered human, really. You're not considered an adult. You're considered you're not considered a person in your own right, because you have to have a male guardian. They're not allowed to take any decisions of their own. And that's exactly what happened to Dina. She claims she was treated like a criminal in the Philippines, and she says she feared being killed by her family if she was sent back to Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia doesn't just ban women from traveling without male guardians, but it seems in this case they hunt them down as well if they do. But right now, I think her current whereabouts are unknown. She supposedly was forcibly returned back to the kingdom earlier this week, but nobody really knows what's happened to her. And there have been protests outside Saudi embassies, I think in America. This seems to be another sad case where we have an adult woman who can't do what she wants simply because she's from a country where the religion and the culture don't deem her to be an adult in her own right. She needs men to tell her what to do. She can't control her own fate. It's not in her control.
Utterly failed by the Philippines as well. They were complicit in sending her back, but I believe they confiscated her passport at one point, according to reports. It's just a terrible, terrible situation. So we'll have to keep our eyes peeled in terms of any developments on that as they surface. Yeah. But it's just a terrible situation where you have no autonomy as a female if you come from Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I wonder if any left-wing or white feminists in the UK or America have spoken out, against this. It seems that feminism is not for everyone. Only certain women can enjoy, human rights and certain privileges. But if you're from Saudi Arabia, hey, it's your culture and religion. Why are you speaking out?
Who are we to judge? Okay.
Who are we to judge?
Talking of judging, I think it's time for the ASLAN Awards.
There's this misconception that people derive their values from their scriptures.
Who goes to hell?
Gays, fags, hundreds and hundreds of Jews.
You identify yourself as gay. Why don't you then choose to be Muslim when it says explicitly in Judeo-Christian tradition that is prohibited?
There's this misconception that people derive their values from their scripture.
The ASLANs.
So the ASLAN Awards are an award given to an apologist spouting lies and nonsense, and I have a contender, Iram. I don't know if you're familiar with a lady called Shelly Asquith.
Oh, Mufti Asquith.
Yeah, I mean, her surname sounds like a sneeze to begin with. Sure, I think Shelly Asquith is how I'm going to refer to her for the duration of this segment. She is the vice president of the NUS, which is the National Union of Students in the UK. Now, many may be forgiven for thinking that's actually ran by students. It isn't. It's a union for students, the hierarchy, the people at the top. I believe these people are in full-time positions. They're adults. We're talking people like Malia Boatia, who's, I can talk about her for hours regarding other issues on a different day. But this lady called Shelly Asquith, she sent out a very inflammatory tweet the other day. Now, she's got, I think she might have 19,000 followers. I'll have to double check that. She's verified with a blue tick, so she's vice president of the National Union of Students. She's credible in terms of reputation, in terms of getting noticed. People will see what she's saying and follow it. She tweeted out this allegation that not only were Westminster University, the University of Westminster, shredding, I think she phrased it as, actually, I'm going to find the direct quote. She sent out a tweet saying, it's not just the CCTV cameras the Westminster University is guilty of. This refers to a story where they installed CCTV cameras in prayer rooms on campus, and I think this was in result to a few instances of antisocial behaviour and or violence. I'll have to look into that deeper. But she goes on to say, they also destroyed all the students' Qurans. This is what Prevent has caused. Now, I know you know quite a bit about Prevent. Prevent's the anti-extremist legislation policy in the UK. It focuses on Islamist terror, far-right terror, all forms of extremism, looks out for telltale signs, creates channels where people can report it. She's making the claim that the Islamic holy book, as Muslims see it, are being destroyed by the university, not by any other reason than the fact that the Prevent strategy has engendered some sort of anti-Muslim sentiment. Now that is a big claim, isn't it?
It is, and when she was asked several times to give evidence, she just put her account on private for a while.
Yep.
Yeah. And she just kept repeating this claim. Oh, students have told me. That's not evidence. In no universe is that considered evidence at all. So she was asked several times to show evidence of Westminster University or the Prevent strategy causing the Qurans to be shredded, not just destroyed but shredded as well. So yeah, we're supposed to believe that Prevent walked into the university and just randomly started shredding Qurans, as you do, because you just walk in and you think, oh, what would make this day more fun? No, I think I'll shred a few Qurans.
My question is, though, is she really, really stupid? And I'm talking about Shelly Asquith. Or is she just really, really ignorant? Because how can she... I mean, I don't know if she's playing dumb or she's genuinely that ignorant, but she had no idea...
she's genuinely dumb.
She's genuinely dumb. Because she had no idea what she was amplifying and whipping up had the potential to cause some serious, serious problems. As we've just spoke about earlier, the Pakistani student accused of blasphemy, he's dead now. These things also have a habit of kicking up in the UK. Yep. So I kind of thought, I'm going to try and douse this fire with a considerable amount of water before it gets any higher. So I contacted Westminster Uni Direct, got in touch with their press office, and they told me that the truth of the matter was they'd decided that a prayer room on campus, which I assume was either an Islamic prayer room or was used primarily for that purpose, was to be converted into a multi-faith room. And this was to take place sometime in December. So they had a consultation process between summer 2016 all the way through to December, where they got in touch with all the relevant societies, including the Islamic Society, and said, look, any materials left in this room after this point will be disposed of. This, in apparently speaking to my contact at Westminster Uni, not only included books, but included other things that had just been left behind. They'd been given several months to come and collect their property. They didn't. The room needed renovating. They got people in. The items were disposed of. Tell Mama has also contacted the university after some point after me doing it, and they were informed that actually they were disposed of with due care and consideration, in terms of what people expect in that faith for disposal of their holy book, to avoid some, quote unquote desecration, and she was still having none of it. I'm trying to tell her, look, Shelley, this is really nothing, and she was calling it malicious. She's trying to whip up some sort of blasphemy lynch mob at Westminster University because of Prevent. I mean, is Prevent just... I had a little search of her tweets to see what else she said about Prevent. She called it a racist policy.
She's been encouraging people to work against Prevent. So anything that she can try and include Prevent in, she'll do that. This clearly has nothing to do with Prevent. It's just a university procedure. But she's thought, how can I... kill two birds with one stone. Oh, yeah, I'll try and whip up a blasphemy mob, and I'll, try and get people to hate Prevent even more.
You see who was hovering around like some hungry, scabby fucking vultures? Cage UK, straight in there. Here's a tweet. We wish to comment on the allegations and await your version of events. So they don't even know what's going on, but they wish to make a comment. And they CC'd in on this tweet Al Jazeera, BBC News, Channel 4 News, and 5 Pillocks.
And Prevent Watch also got involved as well. This is a group that actually just spreads lies about Prevent, by the way. They actually spread false stories.
Yeah, they tweeted out, "This is of grave concern. Do you have further details?" And I saw this spiralling. So I thought, having done a little bit of digging and getting to the bottom of what actually happened, she'd kind of retract and quiet down. No, she's full steam ahead, still trying to. Last I saw, Majid Nawaz was reaching out to her to try and get her on his radio show on LBC to defend these allegations she's made. Because she's not necessarily wrong that Qurans have been destroyed. It's just that it was nothing malicious for a start. It's the fact that she's trying to say it's because of some anti-Muslim sentiment. I mean, it's like... she just wants to shoehorn Prevent into any ill deed that's happened, like, Godzilla attacks Tokyo and somehow that's the fault of Prevent.
Can I just say here, this idea of disposing of Qurans, like, even if it's true that they were shredded, scholars around the world, Muslim scholars, are actually of agreement that if you want to dispose of any old Qurans for various reasons, you can actually burn them, put them in water so that the ink runs, or you can, guess what, shred them.
Yep.
So that you're not actually desecrating what Muslims believe are holy words. So there you are, Mufti Ramzan has spoken, and that's the correct way. So if anyone wants to dispose of Qurans, by the way, you know now how to do it. Don't just flog them outside or chuck them in the bin. You can actually shred them, which is apparently what Westminster University did. We don't know that. They probably didn't. They probably just put them in a box and then gave them to a charity store or some sort of bookshop, or just asked people to collect them later on. But you're right. This is a woman clearly with an agenda. It does not matter what the facts are. This is why you can't reason with such people. They don't care what the facts are. I don't care if people say otherwise. People might suggest, oh, you're being unfair. I don't think I am. People like her do not care about the facts. They have an agenda to push, and they will do it regardless, and they don't care how many falsehoods are spread out there, as long as they get to push their narrative and get to speak out against the government or any government legislation, the Prevent strategy being one of them. And this is a woman who clearly sympathizes with what is essentially the far right. These Islamists, they are the far right, but she would never contemplate sharing a platform with the white far right. No, white far right is bad. Brown far right, good.
The far white. I think we should call it from now on.
The far white. That's the hashtag, people. Far white.
If you've made it this far, can you hashtag far white, please? Yeah, it's crazy. And luckily, from what I can see, because there was an official explanation out there pretty soon, it hasn't received the traction that you expect these things to.
Well, her tweet didn't really get that much traction, because even though she's been saying it, I've not seen any news organizations pick it up and write about it. I think maybe they just dismiss this as another dismissed her as a rambling idiot, really.
Sounds about right. So the winner of this week's ASLAN Award, congratulations, Shelly Asquith. I'm going to get a lot of mileage out of that joke, I think. It just feels right. It feels good.
It feels far white.
Hey!
Hey!
So, thankfully, that fizzled out before it got started. It'll be interesting to see if she carries on now as if nothing's happened, or kind of... people like this don't say sorry, do they? They don't, soz. It never happens, does it?
They really don't. You have to be really shameless for that. And can I say it's a bit rich for Westminster ISOC to be, claiming anything. I mean, this is a bloody group that's consistently given platforms to extremist speakers. This is a place where Jihadi John went as well. So, really, are they?
What are you
wants
telling
to
me?
Talk about discrimination?
Are you telling me Jihadi John, Mohammed Emwazi, that poor disenfranchised boy from a poor family, managed to study at Westminster University? I might have to take my narrative and put that in the bin right away. I just assumed they were all mouth-breathing, brainwashed idiots with no agency whatsoever. You're telling me he studied at one of the most prestigious institutions on the planet, Iram?
Yeah, but, I have an agenda to push as well. I'm just Prevent-funded and... I'm funded by Mossad as well, so I'll say anything, really.
I wouldn't mind some of that Jew money. Maybe we should cross over to the other side. What do you think?
I think so. I mean, yeah. If any loaded Jews or Zionists are listening.
Well, that was a nice clumsy segue to some news coming out of Israel just before we came to air. I don't know if you saw this. British tourist has been killed in Israel, stabbed to death on public transport by a Palestinian suspect, apparently.
Oh, God. Yeah,
I mean, this happens quite regularly, so I'm told. It doesn't often get reported in the UK, obviously, because it's Israel, isn't it? But when was the last time that happened, though? A tourist was stabbed like that, or genuinely any Israeli citizen was stabbed and then murdered in such a way. I mean, we don't really hear of that many stories of something like this happening, because even though it's a bit of a conflict zone, Israel still is a very safe country to visit. I mean, I've not read much about this report. I saw it very briefly earlier, but I'm sure her family, this person's family must be absolutely devastated. It's is horrific. It is absolutely horrific. Okay, well, I'm just trying to think of more instances. I don't know if you were familiar with the Dortmund attack that happened the other day. The Borussia Dortmund football players, soccer players were en route to a Champions League cup tie, and their bus was on the receiving end of some improvised explosives, 3 in total, I'm led to believe, allegedly left in some hedges on, which was on the bus's route. Now, luckily, no one was killed. One of the players sustained damage to their wrist. I've heard that these explosives were packed with shrapnel or perhaps nails. I'm not entirely sure. One of which lodged itself into the headrest of the coach. So that was I'm talking about the coaches in the one of the managers of the team. He got a lucky escape from that. Now, when this kind of thing happens, when you're thinking of explosives left, you don't instantly think Islamism, but I wasn't surprised to find out the suspect they have in custody for this is a member and affiliated with the Islamic State, and it does look like another attempt. I mean, luckily, this guy seems to be a really shit bomb maker. Otherwise, this could have been absolutely catastrophic. But I mean, what we've seen now is this is I don't know how much more longer these attacks can be sustained, but what we're seeing now is we're seeing increased security presence in town centres. We're seeing bollards being erected in anticipation of car attacks. We're seeing real heavy security now at football games, and it's just creating this climate of fear. I mean, I for one, am glad for these measures. Unfortunately, it is necessary, but it is changing the way we live now. It is having a complete knock-on effect in terms of social interactions, events, large gatherings, and now sport. And you just kind of think, is this going to be the new normal now, this kind of siege mentality?
Well, I know a few people, whenever something happens, they'll say, oh, don't let them take away our freedoms. Don't let them scare us. Do we really need all these security measures? Well, if you don't want to die, yes, we do need these security measures. For fuck's sake. I don't understand if these events were rare. They happen once every 5-10 years or something like that. But they seem to be happening nearly every week now. I don't think we can really take it for granted. Obviously, I'm not saying we should do absolutely everything. We should do anything in the name of keeping ourselves safe. There are some limitations, of course, but at the same time, we can't take it for granted that we won't be attacked or we won't be involved in any potential bombing or attack. We need these measures, unfortunately, and I don't really know what to say. I mean, it's just become so normal, really, hasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, like you say, you don't want to stop going out, enjoying yourself. But you just feel like it is a lottery at the minute, especially the way Europe is. I mean, it's getting to the point now where I can't keep up with the amount of attacks and events, and not even that. The list of foiled attempts at attacks is really concerning reading as well.
Yeah, was it the IRA who said you have to be lucky all the time? We have to be lucky once.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's just it. They only have to be lucky. And it is all about luck, really, about the timing and the way they do it and how many people they can take out. I think it is all down to luck, and also the role the security services and the police have to play. I mean, we've been really, really lucky in this country that we've not had so many attacks, and that's because of the role our security services play, the police play. The Westminster attack, for example, that could have been a lot worse than it was. And it's sad that anyone had to die. The woman that jumped into Westminster Bridge to avoid being hit by the car that Khalid Masood was driving, she did later go on to die, sadly.
Did she jump in, or was she hit by the car and thrown in?
I think she tried to avoid it and she jumped in. I could be wrong, but either way, there was hope of her possibly surviving. But sadly, that didn't happen. And that brings me on to a very brief point, about this idea of lone wolf attackers. And yeah, they might be acting alone. They might be carrying out the attack themselves. And that's what happened exactly with the Khalid Masood. But if you go into their background, you see that they're part of this wider network. They're not completely alone. They're part of these circles that are promoting an extremist and deadly ideology, and they're trying to recruit as many people as possible.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of... I'm hoping to speak to an author, possibly today actually, called Graham Wood, and he wrote a fantastic book called The Way of the Strangers, which is about ISIS.
Yeah, he's the one that I think he wrote an article.
Yeah, in the Atlantic.
I think was it last year about ISIS. Yeah, it was a great article.
It's a wonderful book. People. I like books where they're not really leaning on an agenda. Either some people will basically say it's all Islam's fault, it's all Muslims' fault, and that'll be what they're pushing. Others will, say it's a foreign policy issue, it's America, these people are just banding together in response to that. He's approaching it like a journalist. Obviously, he's got biases, but he will just ask these Islamists what they think and document it, and that's the best way to understand, really. But he was saying, because there's this idea as well that it's an internet issue as well, these people self-radicalising. And that's true, that does happen. But if that was the only way, you'd find a much more even spread of jihadists throughout the country, whereas throughout of Europe, however they tend to cluster in certain parts of the world, and this is down to charismatic recruiters and preachers and influential people within that community who band together and put these ideas in people's head. And I don't believe that Khalid Masood chap's name was on a lot of literature in the Luton Mosque. Is that right?
Yes, and the guy at the mosque, Abdul Baksh Kadir, I think his name is. He was in a picture with the local police officers, championed as someone who's good for community integration and cohesion. And you think, if the police are actively working alongside people like that, then what bloody chance do we have? And I think Tommy Robinson, of all people, was the one who was speaking out about this. For many years, he's the one that kept saying, look, the police are working with such people. And obviously he was just dismissed because, he's
far white.
He's far white and he's racist. And what happens is, when you ignore what's happened with Tommy Robinson, is that, he was just ignored, except by, a few people who wanted to listen to him. And unfortunately, I think it's just made some of his views a bit more extreme. I do think he has a point in some of the things that he says, but then I think sometimes he gets into this danger of treating all Muslims the same, or conflating between Islam and Muslims, because he'll share a story where the defendant is a Muslim or has a Muslim name, but the crime will have nothing really to do with his religion.
Yeah.
And then he doesn't really seem to suggest any constructive ideas on how we can solve this issue of extremism. So I don't think we can completely dismiss somebody like Tommy Robinson. He was saying this a few years ago.
Far white apologist.
I'm far white. I'm neocon, Zionist, Mossad funded.
Yeah. So
that's why I have my shoes intact, you see.
I've spoke about Tommy
a lot.
a lot.
A few people are gonna criticize me for that and think I'm probably beyond the pale. Anyone who even remotely tries to agree with Tommy Robinson is seen as an extremist sympathizer. I'm one of those people. I very rarely dismiss somebody completely. And I do think, he does have, there are some things that I obviously disagree with him a lot on, but there were some things that he said before where he has had a point, and people just dismiss it because, it's Tommy Robinson. But you've had him on your show before.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't know what you think of him then, or what you think of him now.
Well, I've spoke about this at length before, and it's there's too much noise surrounding him, whereas the truth is somewhere in between. To the media and to the mainstream left, he's some far right neo-Nazi racist football hooligan, essentially, and that's not true. That's just not true. And to his supporters and followers, he's some sort of St. George waving saviour who's going to solve all the issues of Islam, and that's not true either. He's got some extremely valid points. He's got an extremely valid experience. I don't see an issue with people wanting to hear what he has to say. He's not to me, he's not somebody who I go to as a source. I don't think he's particularly objective for reasons that you just mentioned there. The fact that he has a tendency to share any old thing that he feels bolsters his anti-Islamic narrative, whether it's relevant or not. So I don't trust him as a source. I don't think he's beyond the pale. I don't think he's a monster. But this is the problem.
No.
This is the knock-on effect. I'm fully aware of how toxic his reputation is. I know that if I do see something of value on his Twitter feed, if I retweet that, that's 2 days of me defending myself for retweeting. His reputation. His reputation's that toxic, and like you've said before, he does have a few "I told you so" vouchers in his back pocket. He was one of the first people to start, banging the drum about Anjem Chowdhury and his merry men of Islamist thugs. He was one of the first people to start banging the drum about Muslim rape gangs. He was one of the first people to start banging the drum about police cover-ups and things like that. And all these things have turned out to actually be based in fact since then. So it's difficult. He's an interesting figure. There's more to him than people think. he's just not my guy, if that makes sense. He's not somebody I gravitate towards.
Yeah, I know what you mean. And I'm glad we've actually discussed this, because it's brought me onto something that I wanted to get onto. And we're talking about people who are considered beyond the pale, like Ayaan Hirsi Ali. There were these Muslim women in Australia who did a video saying, Ayaan you don't represent me. And, they signed a petition to ban her from speaking in Australia. And she had to cancel her Australian tour because she didn't feel safe. Now, you just have to wonder to yourself, you women, you're probably leading very privileged lives, and you have the nerve to criticize somebody who's escaped a very conservative society. She's under constant death threats. She has security wherever she goes. Can you imagine living a life like that, where you can't even leave your house unless you have security? Try and imagine that for a second. She's undergone FGM as well. She's not had an easy life by all means. And yet this is somebody who they think is so toxic and dangerous to Muslims that they're going to ban her from speaking. And yet at the same time, Australian women who are part of the Hizb ut-Tahrir, the extremist Hizb ut-Tahrir group in Australia, did a video a couple of days ago where they were instructing, they published a manual on how to beat your wife correctly. I don't see any protests about that. And yet someone like Ayaan Hirsi Ali is considered as being Islamophobic and someone who is dangerous to Muslims. So why is she considered beyond the pale? And yet there are no protests against these women who think it's perfectly okay for husbands to beat their wives, even if it is symbolically. And on Sedal, we published a piece by a Kashmiri writer who picked up on this issue, and she said her argument was, let's allow Ayaan Hirsi Ali to speak. We can see where we agree, and we can see where we disagree, and how we could come to how we can solve some of the problems that we have in our society. So agree where we can, disagree where we must. So challenge her where you think she's wrong. I don't think there's anything wrong with that, but a few people had an issue with that just because it was Ayaan Hirsi Ali, who's considered beyond the pale by many now. And this is a problem that I'm seeing. I don't know if you've noticed it, but people often who complain about the left or regressive left are becoming slightly regressive themselves. They don't want to hear anything from Ayaan Hirsi Ali. They think Richard Dawkins is beyond the pale. They think Sam Harris is bad. I think, who is acceptable? Who is an acceptable bunch of people that we can listen to? Because
Dave Rubin. Dave Rubin is the devil. If you go to some corners of a certain gaggle of people on the internet now, Dave Rubin is the worst thing that's happening right now. And it's just it's
these people are it's like this group of acceptable, quote unquote acceptable speakers is becoming smaller and smaller and smaller.
Yep.
And pretty soon I don't think we'll be left with anybody.
Yeah.
It's like we have to agree with people on 100%, or they have to agree with us 100%, or that's it. You're considered a problem. You're considered beyond the pale. Oh my God, you interacted with Tommy Robinson, right? That's it. I don't want to speak to you now. And oh my God, you think Richard Dawkins isn't a complete dick? Well, I'm done with you now. For heaven's sake. And there are some people who consider these people as bad as Islamists or actual terrorists. I don't even know what to say to that.
It's incredible, and it's especially difficult. I mean, who was it who talked about the narcissism of small differences? I've got a feeling it was Freud. But I mean, it's especially bad. I mean, if you've got someone on the right, who far right or wherever, who've got completely different views than you can kind of understand it a little bit. But there are people who genuinely believe in secularism, free expression. They're against extremism, but somebody within that world will say something that isn't in complete agreement with their worldview, and like you say, that they're cast out as some sort of pariah. I mean, I tend to draw the line at liars. If someone's, if someone's intentionally misrepresenting the argument or the words, and this happens to Richard Dawkins. Richard Dawkins, depending on who you read, is some paedophile apologist. What? Yeah. He basically said he had an experience of sexual abuse as a boy when he was younger. And he said, and this is him sharing his experience, keep in mind, nothing else. He said something along the words of it wasn't the worst thing to happen. It's not really had a lasting effect on him. He didn't think it was that bad, kind of thing. Now, that's his experience. That's his worldview. That's what he feels about what happened to him. People are saying that he's downplaying paedophilia. He's an apologist for paedophiles. It's this kind of hyperbole. I mean, just... this is fun because I've got a dedicated gaggle of trolls myself now who will go through my entire tweet history and try and, make it seem that as if I'm some Nazi fascist, I think I was called the other day, white supremacist.
You are?
Yes, I am, but I don't let people know that. It's a complete secret. There's no way there's anything out there to show that. And it's... Andy, people are sending these things to Andy Kindler now, and he's just retweeting them like I'm some Nazi apologist. And this is because I said, don't punch Richard Spencer in the face for speaking his view. It's kind of, one against the law. Let's not forget that. I'm just basically reiterating what the law says. I don't
encourage you people not to punch someone in the face.
That makes me a Nazi.
You're vile. Yeah. You know that?
But that's it. These people have no arguments now, so they have to reach for the worst label. It used to be racist. You're racist, and now people mock that a little bit, don't they? If someone shouts racist, it's a little bit funny, because we know how overused it is. So they've progressed now to white supremacists. That Ayaan Hirsi Ali got called a white supremacist by these lovely Muslim women in this Australian video you spoke about earlier. Nazis are back.
Black woman being accused of being a white supremacist. It'd be funny if it wasn't so fucking tragic.
Yeah. Nazis are back in a big way. Nazis are so 2017 now. Nazis are everywhere. We're right back in business with the Nazis. Everyone's a Nazi. It doesn't matter if you adhere to National Socialism and or want to exterminate all the Jews. If you say something I don't like, you're a Nazi. That's the rule. No take-backs. And it's just people are imploding. And that's one of the things I love about being an atheist. I don't have to toe to any line. I can be independent and work with people who are like. And I'm not going to have any nonsense in and out group politics. I think... I was speaking to... I went out for a few work drinks a while back, and I was speaking to the daughter of one of my work colleagues, and she had some views on a particular topic, and you could tell she'd never spoke to anyone else about it with a different view. And I basically, my advice was, when you get back to uni, go to and talk to people who don't agree with you. You don't have to row with them, just listen to what they've said. If they're making good points, you can incorporate that into your arguments, adjust and strengthen them. And it just seems now that people aren't... I go to the Twitter timelines of people I don't particularly like sometimes or don't agree with, just to see there's a little kernel of some truth in there. It doesn't make any sense to filter your entire intellectual experience by going to people you know are going to tell you what you already think.
But people want to live in those bubbles. It makes them feel good about themselves, I guess. And sometimes... people like to virtue signal as well. Not everyone, but a lot of people, they just don't want to...
Nazis
maybe they're tired of debating with him.
I hate Nazis. I'm anti-Nazi. Well, fuck me. No way. You maverick. Gosh. How radical. What a radical notion that is. Anti-Nazi.
Yeah. Well done for being anti-Nazi. Like I said, some of these so-called anti-fascist groups are actually fascists themselves. They're protesting fascists, and yet they're...
Pepper spray, smacking people, trashing cars.
Their methods are even worse.
Yeah.
I was watching the documentary on... now, if I'm not beyond the pale now, I will be in a second. I was watching a documentary on Enoch Powell. On his Rivers of Blood speech. I know. It's something I will never live down. But I was watching that. I've not finished it all, but I'll send you a link to it because you're already Nazi anyway.
Might as well.
Yeah. So I was watching this speech, and it's talking about the context in which Enoch Powell. For some of you who don't know, he was a British Conservative politician who made a very famous Rivers of Blood speech, and he was talking about the impacts of mass immigration, and he's talking about the context in which Powell said what he did, the reaction, And I've not watched all of it. I've just watched part of it. And in this documentary, some of these protesters against Enoch Powell, they were, just screaming at him and telling to leave and get out. And you think, okay, fine, you don't like the contents of his speech, but how are your actions showing that you're a better person? Surely you'd want to sit down, talk with him, see where you agree, see where he has a point, and see where you disagree. But no, we don't want to do that. We just want to scream at people and tell them to shut up. And unfortunately, that's that nothing's changed. You see the same thing happening now at these, say EDR marches or Britain First events, and all these so-called anti-fascists turn up to protest, and you think, so you're all right protesting against white fascists, but I don't see you dedicating anywhere near that amount of energy towards brown fascists, because they don't. They get away with it.
They won't talk. They'll just shout fascist when someone tries to interview them or ask them what they think. And it's interesting because these people are almost displaying a hard conservative religious zeal in their belief that they are right, because they're saying, look, I'm so convinced of my righteousness that violence isn't off the table. Violence is bad. Most of these people understand violence is bad, but hang a minute, these people are evil. These people are the Nazis. These people are the Trump supporters. I mean, it's not because
it's just, sorry to interrupt you, but it's such an easy thing to protest against, because no one's going to defend Britain First, no one's going to defend the EDL, no one's going to defend Trump. So it's easy for them to come out and start protesting and screaming, basically.
And these people don't have any actual principles. It's all about identity politics and virtue signaling, because my principles are pretty much consistent, and there's an easy way you could probably show some hypocrisy on this, because I've said, look, don't punch people like Richard Spencer, don't punch Trump fans and supporters. If they're not being violent and they're just speaking, why are you attacking people physically? And let me remind you, it's the law. But I feel the same about people I hate, Islamists, Anjem Chowdhury. As long as they're speaking and not being physically aggressive or attacking you or preventing you from getting A to B, don't punch them, don't attack them. So that's consistent to me. I'm not like saying, don't punch. I'm not. See, it would betray some sort of strange bias if I was saying, don't punch Richard Spencer. Oh, Anjem Chowdhury, yeah, definitely clock that guy. But I'm not saying that. I'm saying don't punch people for speaking. I mean, how? Wow, I don't understand how people have gone, well, that Stephen Knight's a fucking Nazi.
Why is it so controversial to say, don't punch people?
Don't punch people, guys. What? But this is like, I'm saying it's a complete and total religious mindset almost, in terms of, hard belief that these people are the kafir, they're infidels, these people. They're almost subhuman, and they should be attacked on sight. That's the mentality, and that's incredibly dangerous. I mean, I was saying this on a podcast not so long ago. I'm less concerned about far-right violence of the, they call it the quote-unquote domestic kind, than I am about far-left violence at the minute. I think I'm more likely to get in trouble or clocked by some so-called Antifa. So it's interesting to see how this...
no, but that makes you an alt-right defender, because I've known people who have said, well, I think Islamism is far more concerning than, say, far-right, because Islamists and Muslim extremists are the one who are going around blowing shit up, whereas, maybe the far-right aren't doing that as much. So all they said was, I'm more concerned. They didn't say the
say it's not an issue.
Problem.
Yeah.
They didn't say it's not an issue. They just said Islamists are worse. And even they have been accused of, defending the alt-right, or you're basically a Nazi apologist now. And it's ridiculous. No one's defending the far right at all. But, for them, it's a case of who's causing more trouble and who's killing more people. That was what they based it on. Really, you can disagree with that, you can agree with it, but for them just to go and say, oh, well, you're a Nazi or Nazi apologist or Nazi enabler, is ridiculous. It seems that people don't really want to debate things properly. They just they just want to, show, look how virtuous they are. Yeah, so it's just a case of they want to, they pick an easy battle, I think, because some people very rarely, like these far left groups, they don't really challenge Islamist extremists because, it's like at Goldsmiths College where Maryam Namazi came to speak, and, the ISOC group predictably didn't want her to speak there, and the LGBT group there and the feminists were defending the ISOCs and they were attacking Maryam Namazi. And I thought, these are people who, in their ideal state would never defend you, and you'd be relegated to second or third class status, and yet you're siding with them because you somehow think that defending them is challenging racism. Well, it's not. It's not. But so they pick an easy fight.
It's the poor brown person. They need a white English saviour to protect them from, further repression.
That's just as racist.
Yeah.
It's because if the far left think, that all Muslims are victims, then the far right will think all Muslims are aggressors no matter what.
Yep. Right. Well, so fuck the far left. As far as I come, I mean, this maybe ties into Trump fatigue. Do you think it's dying down a little bit? This because the social interactions on the internet have become almost unbearable since the election of Trump. People have just lost their mind, and it's all you can see everywhere. I don't know if we're reaching sort of peak point now where it's tipping over and people are just calming down a little bit and they're not giving round the clock coverage, or is it just because I've filtered most of it out, do you think?
I think it's probably the latter. I think well, we've got 4 years of him, or probably 8 if he wins a second term. So
I wouldn't bet against
it. People are trying to conserve their energy because they're thinking, we've got 4 years, we don't want to burn out too quickly.
Didn't you want to speak about Mickey Pence?
Mike Pence, yes, his vice president. He's been in the news because apparently he claims that he'd never dine alone with a woman other than his wife, and he seems to think that's a great thing, when really it just shows exactly what type of person he is. He's conservative and he's Republican.
I missed this. So he's saying he'd never spend time socially with another woman. Alone.
Regardless. He that's reserved to his wife.
Lucky woman.
Yeah. But to be fair, I don't think anyone wants to be alone with Mike Pence.
It's not his choice, basically, is what he's saying.
Yeah, but let's say even if you want to, I mean, you this isn't something that's constrained to just conservative Christians. We have this in other societies and religions as well, where they think men and women shouldn't be friends, shouldn't spend any time alone together. So if it seems to me that maybe he thinks he can't either control himself around women, or women are a temptation for him. If anything, it says more about his views than anything. His wife is probably, maybe it was to reassure his wife, look, baby, I'm not cheating on you or anything. But really it just goes to show what kind of mindset he has, that you don't think you can sit alone with a woman. What do you think is going to happen? Do you think you're going to jump her? Do you think she's going to jump you? I don't think the latter is very likely. Yeah. So what? And it's just a problem with these conservative people. They think they're being virtuous somehow by saying all these things and promoting these ideas. But really, if they seem to, they're the ones who are sexualizing people, because they're saying, oh, men and women, if they spend any time together, the evil things will happen. Satan will tempt us. Well, no, people can be rational as well. But speaking of Christians, we've had instances lately where Christians have been offended, and
did they
all around Easter?
Or did they blow up? Who did they beat to death?
They probably blew a blood vessel or something. But
are you referring to Tesco?
I am. Yes. Would you like to introduce this this Tesco news story?
Well,
I'm sure you've seen it.
There is the most popular chain of supermarkets in the UK for our American and non-UK listeners is Tesco, closely followed by Walmart, or Asda, as we like to say. They, on what is OK Friday, Good Friday, Not So Bad Friday, Average Friday, they have had this promotion, and I'll quote from it. This was in print, in newspapers and various other places. It says, "Great offers on beer and cider. Good Friday just got better." Now, that seems fairly innocuous to me. They recognise that it's Good Friday, and they know, being English, if the weather's good, we're all just going to be really drunken in the garden. So they're promoting beer, which is what a private business in the retail sector should be doing, really. And the Christian groups haven't seen it that way. And in fact, I believe Tesco has actually apologised for any offence caused by the advertisement. He said it wouldn't run the advertisement again. But, I mean, I was very surprised to see one of the people protesting this was Reverend Richard Coles. Now, he's the guy, I mean, he called this advert extraordinarily and unnecessarily ignorant. Now, he's like I'm not entirely sure, I think he might be gay. I mean, he's the poster boy for this progressive, lovey-dovey, soft, funny, humorous, self-deprecating Christian. Yeah, you know, tea and biscuits, funky vicar. These people are always trying to get me to invite him on the podcast. I'm not against the idea. It's just one of the things I've never really given much thought to. I was very surprised because when I saw his name mentioned in this article, I assumed he'd be the one saying, "Come on, get a grip, everyone. It's just whatever." But people are genuinely annoyed that there's this conflation with Easter and alcohol. I mean, it goes back to this thing where mostly in a secular society, which I think we are, if not in name but in attitudes now, no one really sees these things as religious holidays anymore. Or should I say not no one, the majority of people don't. I'm happy to call it Good Friday. I wish someone a happy Easter break before I left work yesterday. At no point in their utterances did I think they had any religious significance to me or the people I was talking to whatsoever. It's kind of like some sort of Christian mafia saying, actually, you will understand Easter to be one thing and one thing only, and it's whatever we decide. We just want to get pissed, Iram. We just want to get pissed.
Well, speak for yourself. But yeah, I was just surprised it was described as crass. I mean, it's not like they advertised, I don't know, a sale on pork for Ramadan or Eid or something. That would be a bit crass, yes. But all in all, what harm was done? I mean, if that's the most that you can complain about, just this advert on beer, then really, you have it good. Just quit whining. Don't quit whining and drink beer instead.
Quit whining, drink beer.
Brought to you by Tesco.
Every little helps. I mean, I'm not doubting, like in far places, far off places, Christians are having genuine oppression visited upon them. They are persecuted in many horrific ways. England, not so much. If you're getting your knickers in a twist, gendered insult there, about an advert in Tesco, I don't really think you should be listened to. I can't believe they've capitulated to this bleating from some humorless Christians who no doubt probably went out on Easter and picked up some wine.
Not beer.
Not beer, not beer or cider or something. It's nothing really. It's an absolute nothing story. I mean, really, where are the where's the mass outrage from pagan groups in the UK at the cultural appropriation of their Easter holiday? They've got every right to say, actually, I'm very, very offended by the fact that this is being spun as a purely Christian festival. Yeah.
Well, the thing is, Easter is really a spring festival, and since time began, really, societies around the world have celebrated, say, the arrival of winter or the coming of spring. These are really, really old festivals. They were there before these major religions decided to adopt them. We have the Persian New Year, which is celebrated towards the end of March, and that's the celebration of the arrival of spring. And as you pointed out, pagan groups as well who celebrate it. So it's not exclusively a Christian thing anyway. So why does one group get a monopoly on it?
Fuck 'em. Iram, we've covered the far left, global terror, Shelly Asquith, and Dina Ali, Mike Pence, Mashal Khan. Is there anything else? Iggy the dog, bless her. Anything else you want to get in at all?
Just very briefly mention, about Chechnya's treatment of gay people. Apparently there are some concentration camps in the region, treating gay people brutally. And when asked about this, the leader of Chechnya, Ramzan Kadyrov, no relation, by the way, he said, "Oh, how can you persecute people that don't really exist?" So there's denial that there are gay people. I know there are groups out there who are speaking out about this, but again, it doesn't really spark as much outrage as other incidents. But yeah, I'm just amazed that we still live in a world where you can torture somebody simply for their sexuality and who they love, who they are attracted to. It's bizarre, but it still happens. I don't know if you've been keeping an eye on this in the news at all, but Peter Tatchell is a gay rights campaigner. He spoke out against it. Even Owen Jones wrote an article about this, so it's serious. Wow,
Owen's throwing his hat in the ring. I've seen...
Owen started a podcast, by the way.
As he...
It's going to be well better than yours.
Well, we are the benchmark. I'm just going to check if Owen Jones is still following me on Twitter, actually. Yes, he is. How have I not managed to piss that man off?
Really?
Yeah.
How on earth did you get him to follow you?
I can't remember.
Is Louis Theroux following you, though?
Oh, I don't want to check. My heart will sink if he's not. Let's have a look. Hi, Louis Theroux from the BBC. I'd just like to ask you a few questions. So that's how he speaks.
Hang on a minute. I thought Owen Jones had left Twitter. Is he back now? He said he was with social media.
Yes. I think he said he was taking a back step and only doing, articles and promotions on there and things like that. I mean, I can imagine if you're Owen Jones, your Twitter experience could be a little vexing at times. It's becoming difficult for me to navigate it, so I can't imagine what somebody with 500,000 followers, what their experience must be like.
Oh God, yeah, their phone must just never stop.
I like Owen Jones. I can't stand his views and I want to punch him in the face. But apart from that, I don't think he's a bad person. He's one of them people who I disagree with on almost everything he says, but I can't bring myself to hate him. It might be worth asking him, seeing if he wants to come on the podcast, so he can turn me down with Louis.
Oh, that'll be interesting. You and Owen Jones.
But it's interesting talking about Chechnya, how little media attention that got. I had some gay friends who were fuming about it. They were saying, like, how is one man getting removed from a plane a bigger story than gay concentration camps? And they've got a point, which is not to downplay the experience of that poor chap who got dragged off the plane in America, which no matter how I look at that, there's just no good in it. I don't. There's people doing their best to try and defend this, and I can't see the positive spin on this story whatsoever. It seems horrific. But in terms of how much attention it got in the press, I mean, we live in England, and this is an incident that happened on an American domestic flight. And it's everywhere. Everyone's outraged about it. It's not relevant really to us in any way, but it's all over our news. I'd imagine gay people being rounded up in concentration camps is a global issue. It's to the civilized world, to people who care about liberty and human rights should be banging the drum about it. But no, it's the kind of thing you have to Google to figure, to find it. Unfortunately, I don't know if that's got something to do with the fact as well that maybe it is difficult to verify considering where it is.
I think that's probably the issue. Then I'm hoping it's that.
That and Chechnya is about what 90% Muslim or something like that.
Well, you could see there you go. It's part of their religion and culture, Stephen. So what are you moaning about?
Well, yeah, if I would have
Stop being so freaking Islamophobic.
It's incredible. I mean, this whole gays aren't in our country thing, it reminds me of the similar...
Iran.
Yes, exactly. Similar sort of noises coming out of Iran. And it'd be absolutely laughable were it not so sinister and dangerous. So, I don't know. I mean, to me, it's the kind of... When we talk about refugees and immigration, these are the kind of people that I'd want to have shipped here over anyone. You know, your secularists, your humanists, your LGBT people who are under threat of serious, deadly oppression. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is to this. I don't know. There's nothing I can do about it. I
think realistically, there's nothing you and I can do about it because, you know, we're not Superman and Superwoman. I mean, we're amazing, but we're not that amazing. But I guess as long as you're consistent in your views, you know, so it's like we were saying before, you know, these so-called anti-fascists, they speak out against white fascists, but not brown fascists. As long as you're, I think, consistent and you highlight what's going on and try and bring it to people's attention, I don't think there's much else that most people can really do. I mean, there are maybe organizations out there, charities and NGOs that probably can do a bit more, and you know, maybe we can try and find a way to support them somehow.
I wonder if it'll show up in Pink News at any point.
It has, yes.
Oh, that's good.
It was
that's
in Pink
at
News.
Least.
It was in Pink News, definitely.
Okay. All right, Iram. Well, I think we've pretty much nailed it again for one week.
Like Jesus.
Like Jesus. What I'm gonna do is on my desk in my high-tech recording studio at Spellchecker HQ, I'm gonna put a little post-it note on the wall of number of terror attacks since the last TTM, and just chalk one up just so we can keep a record of just how many occur in the little time between recordings of this show.
That sounds depressing.
It is depressing.
Yeah, necessary.
It's not, yeah, depressing but necessary. All right, Iram, it's been a pleasure.
I know.
You have a great Easter. No death by chocolate. Be careful.
I've been really good. I've not had any chocolate this week.
Chalky side.
Actually, yes, I have. I munched on a chocolate bunny on Tuesday, so I'm looking forward to next Tuesday where I can gorge on some, you know, really, really cheap chocolate.
Discount bunny. All right. Happy hunting.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for listening to the Godless Spellchecker podcast. If you've enjoyed the podcast, please consider supporting by visiting gspellchecker.com/support. From here, you can either become a Patreon subscriber, or you can give a one-off donation through PayPal, or you can just follow some instructions on how best to share the podcast on social media. Put it on a memory stick, throw it at people, whatever works best. Any support's greatly appreciated. I think we've all learned something here today.